Hello. I got the Event Horizon Collector's Edition. Figured I'd do a video because this is a interestingly designed set in a way, like for the fact that instead of having like a J card, it just has it all printed on the box. Like you can't remove that. It has the back, which is not bad. This is obviously the UK version from Zavvi. You know, you got your spine. These aren't stickers. Got the name on the top, nothing on the base, and even the front has a sticker saying Collector's Edition. It includes 4K UHD, Blu-ray, poster, art cards, pin, and patch. Cool. Nice artwork, I guess. I think it's like the theatrical artwork. Again, can't get rid of these, so this is a very pro and con kind of casing. I feel like it would have been better to have bought it from the US, but yeah, not to mention the 4K disc has no special features whatsoever. You get a steelbook, which I'll jump into last. You get a package, because this is a, you know, it's a good box, sturdy, you know, decent. It's still got squashed, as it does. So this whole entire edge was squashed down, but this is thin as shit cardboard. Also kind of a weird box. Like, I feel like it's meant to be a poster. Like, this is obviously top down, looking at the core, and it wraps around here, and then you've got the, you know, the Latin phrase that the guy speaks. Because Latin makes you smart. I don't know. You get a good amount of stuff in here. Like, this is basically worthless. It's such a weird design. You get a pin, which does say the title of the movie, Event Horizon. That's cool. It also has I like the Roman numerals, MMXXXIX. That makes it sound like it came out in 99. I'm pretty sure this is a 97 film. Anyway, maybe that's the date of the, when the ship was meant to go out, like in the film. Because that's 2047, but again, that's not a... IX is a 9. Well, MM is millennium, so that's 20... then 3X's 2039. Maybe it's when the ship departed? Anyway, you get US Aerospace Command Search and Rescue Lewis and Clark badge, which is fine, I guess. It did come with a piece of paper on the back of it, but that came off like instantaneously, and I kind of threw it out because I'm like, okay, I don't care much for patches. I'm not a 50-year-old man. Like, my dad used to collect them, mostly only because he had a blanket that he would attach them to, and we used to go overseas a lot, and he'd buy a lot of patches, kind of like what you do. You buy keychains, badges, pins, whatever the crap. I was a keychain person. One trip which was to Queensland, was a pin person. I bought like a square Queensland thing to pin them all onto, so that was fine. I don't know where that thing is anymore, but like he put, you know, put these on a blanket. I think it was back in the day when people would put those patches on jeans and stuff, so he used to do that, but then he put them all on a blanket instead, and now the blanket's just there. It's actually really uncomfortable because you can't put on the blanket because it's got all this shit sewed into it, but then you got to lay on the blanket, and then it's like really uncomfortable because it's on the recliner chair. Doesn't matter. A nifty thing, which I think is probably the coolest of the special extras, is a blueprint, which is literally blue, which is great. This is of the Event Horizon. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Who gives a shit about the Lewis and Clark? So it's not bad, you know, if you're fond of being a collector and you like designs of ships, which I think it's a cool design, and it's got some cool little like as you can see down there, you got all these little like things for like the med lab and the radioactive center and the escape pod, like all these little image designs, which is cute. Gives you the length, width, engine power, all this kind of stuff. So it's a cool little thing. But then of course the creme de la creme, what everybody wanted, the steelbook, which is an interesting design. I don't really care much for the hands. It makes it feel like it's a zombie film, but then it's basically just one person's hands, really. You got the title Event Horizon. The back of it, I think, is really nice because you've got the ship coming out of the eye. It's got the shadow on it, which is really nice. That obviously comes straight off. Nothing revealed underneath the eye in terms of its design, but it is still like the lights of the engine, which is nice. But the same thing goes here, where this has a black dot. It actually has Sam Neill's character tearing out his eyes. I think I'm pretty goddamn certain that's Sam Neill's character tearing out his eyes. But yeah, so you get a nice sleeve. This can obviously scratch and gets fingerprints, all that kind of jazz. It happens. It's got some nice reflectiveness to it, you know, some highlights and spots like that. Overall, kind of a nice steelbook. I like matte finishes as it is. It's kind of a bit weird having the two eyeballs right next to each other, but you know, it is what it is. You get some art cards as well, which I guess I'll show off now. They're blank on the back, but you've got, you know, it's interesting because they have this image. I don't recall that happening in the film, which, I don't know, I feel like it's intentional. Maybe it's a deleted scene. You got this image, which is the eye as well. It's not actually an eye, the engine. Get your main three characters. This one is a portrait of the characters on the ship, on the Lewis and Clark. Yep. You get Lawrence Fishburne. You get the again on the Event Horizon, because I guess a lot of spiky stuff is cool. And yeah, you get a good inside artwork of them looking at the ball, and some interesting disc art. Yeah. It's got, yeah, it's not bad. You know, the Blu-ray has all the special features. But yeah, so it's got Dolby Atmos. Actually, it's not. It's just Dolby Audio. I think it's like a 5.1 track. You got Dolby Vision Atmos, which is interesting for them to detail it that way. Let's look at the specs. English Dolby True HD 5.1 surround sound. You got a 2.35 to 1 letterbox look. Yeah, there's not much else to detail about it, I don't think. Obviously, you've got your Dolby Vision as well. It does have a good amount of special features as well. You get the commentary, which I think is on the 4K, but I don't think so. I don't think the 4K has any special features at all. Not that I recall. It just says on this, just says feature film, which is always ridiculous. Like, what if I want to watch the 4K Blu-ray with the special features, or at least with the commentary track? That would be ideal, but in this case, it just doesn't. But the Blu-ray has the commentary by Paul W.S. Anderson and producer Jeremy Bolt. The Making of Event Horizon, a 5 docu-series, 5 documentaries, which I think is on Letterboxd as well. You can log that in. The Point of No Return, the filming of Event Horizon with director commentary. Secrets with selectable director commentary. The Unseen Event Horizon, the unfilmed rescue scene, concept art, and trailers. All of that is only on the Blu-ray, so it makes you question, is it really worth getting? I can't compare it to the Scream Factory release, which I really wanted to buy for a long time, but because I'd never seen this film until now. But I instead decided to get this because, hey, 4K, UHD, Dolby Atmos, all that kind of, well, not Dolby Atmos, but Dolby Vision, all that kind of stuff. Visually, the film looks fantastic. And again, I've never seen this film before, but it looks like it was filmed yesterday. That's how crisp it is. Except for when you look at the effects and you realize it's clearly a 90s budgeted film. Like, oh no, look at this bad water effects and the floating objects, which are clearly CGI. And bad particle effects on the clouds. Like there's two ships, and like it zooms out from like the Lewis and Clark next to the Event Horizon, and it's all grey. The only thing that makes it slightly distinct is some blacks and the white of lightning, or the white from the lights from the ships. But it's really hard to read what the fuck is going on in shots like that. And that's not the Dolby Vision or anything talking. That's just the look of the film. It's obviously a very practical heavy film. It's all sets. There's some green screens and stuff probably here and there. Obviously it's set in space, but it looks pretty good for what it is. The audio, I think, was way too quiet for what it was. I had to turn mine. I usually have mine on between 64 to 67. Some things that are dialogue heavy, I'll have it on like 67, but if it's an effects heavy film, maybe 62 to 65. Because then it's loud explosions and stuff. Usually if it's a well-mixed audio track, I don't have to worry about it being too loud. But like if no one's home, I'll keep the volume up, why not? But I had to turn this one up to like 72. It was just so quiet. And then the effects stuff started to kick in the later half of the film, and I had to like turn it down a bit, but it wasn't really much. Like, I could still... Like, the effects weren't too loud, but I was just like, oh, just in case someone comes in and is like, hey, that's a bit of a loud explosion, you want to turn it down? Like, no one complained about the audio, because I could hardly fucking hear it, and neither could they, so it didn't really matter. Surround sound was fine, I guess. You know, you got a lot of parts where you got objects flying past the camera, even if it's water or something, or like a liquid, and you just get the vroom sound effect, because it's such a, wow, look, this film could be done in 3D, but it's the 90s and 3D isn't a thing anymore. So, yeah. I'm going to be honest, this set is fantastic. It's definitely probably like the, as I say, collector's edition. It's the best version I think you could get of the film. Scream Factory, their version might have better special features, but in terms of transfer and stuff, I think this one still tops it all off, just having the extra 4K UHD, the Dolby Atmos, the Dolby Vision and stuff like that, so you benefit a lot there. You could also just get the Scream Factory release. I'd go either, really, at least from what I've read until it. The Scream Factory release is very close to this, but, you know, they've still got slightly different color timings and stuff, and this having the 4K UHD, having that extra Dolby Vision and stuff really makes the blacks shine and stuff, so it makes the film look crisp, which is very nice. I personally didn't care much for the film. Like, I know a lot of people don't like Paul W.S. Anderson films. They think that this is his best film. I think those people are wrong. This is like a bad version of Alien, but also a bad version of Sunshine, which came out after this film. It's a film that, you know, looks good, great practical effects, sets, and it's got a great concept, you know? The whole basically, oh yeah, the ship is basically come from hell, and it uses everyone else's hells to fuck with them, and it's great. That's a great idea. But the execution's terrible. The writing of the script is awful. The direction was a Paul W.S. Anderson film. I don't expect much from his films usually, which is how I like to go into it, but I feel like you can usually tell, because I've watched the majority of his films, from all of the Resident Evil films to Monster Hunter. I know he didn't direct all the Resident Evil films, but he produced most of them at least. He did 4 of them. You've got Alien vs. Predator. I've watched the majority of his movies, and I haven't watched Pompeii. And I do like a lot of his films. I think Resident Evil, the 2002 film, is a better version of this movie. It's basically like the same kind of group dynamic concept of all these people going into one location, find out what the hell's going on, and then all shit hits the fan. But that's a zombie horror, so it's got a different style and feel to it in terms of its horror, which again, not too scary, but at least try something different, like the slow, suspenseful stuff, but still the dumbass jump scares, which this has a lot of. That one has stylized action and stuff, which I think works more for it in favour. It's a more stylized film, arguably dumb as shit, but just fun. And I do like a lot of those Resident Evil films. Some of them I think are atrocious, but some of them I think are really good. I think Resident Evil Retribution is Paul W.S. Anderson's best film. It's a fucking banger. It's basically one of those, hey, what if, like, we grab all these smart ideas of, like, that's his high concept film. It's like, what if the characters from all the Resident Evil films have to go underground into a facility that's basically 3 different simulations, and you got like clones and different zombies and giant creatures, and it's fucking beautiful. It's a lot of fun, and honestly, it's a banger of a film. And I really wanted to like this, because again, I do like to be open-minded when it comes to his films, because he's got such a bad rep, despite getting so many films made. But it's just one of those things of, I don't really know if it's his fault per se, but the writing is just not great. The characters are not entertaining, are not interesting at all. The acting as well, I wouldn't particularly say is very good. I feel like that's on par with the fact that all these people signed on to this great concept film, and then the script was just really lousy. But then the director didn't know how to do anything with it, so they didn't really have much to go off of, and it just feels really cheap in a way. Like, I don't want to be the one to diss on this film. That's a cult classic, but it's also like, sometimes things are a cult classic for a reason. Something like this, which is a great concept film, which I'm gonna rely on, that's its biggest win, is its concept, followed by the great practical sets. It looks great. And, Sam Neill's pretty decent in it. He's really, really goofy when he becomes the bad guy, basically, but he's also I'm not completely sold on his character from the get-go anyway. Some of the characters are a bit too, we need the funny black guy kind of deal. It's like, I'm surprised that guy survived the film. I'm also like, sure, why not? But they don't really, lean into a lot of the stupid shit that he says, because it's, in contrast to everyone else. It's like, why is this guy in this movie? It just doesn't feel appropriate that... it's one of those things where people will set up the military and but then there's you gotta get the funny guy to be like, I fuck you, Captain, and the Captain's like, no, fuck you, and it's like, you don't, America's very strict on its military. It's like, you'd think that these people would be more professional with how they fucking work, not just, we're just a crew on a ship. This isn't Alien, alright? They were fucking truckers in space. This is, military people. It just seems so dumb. And really, the twist being what the high concept is, I think, is a bit stupid. I think they really should have lent into it a lot more, blown up the Lewis and Clark a lot sooner, to give them kind of no hope but to see if they can just try to salvage it with, do we blow up the Event Horizon and try to fucking scoot off that way, or do we go into this, other dimension and see if there's anything actually there? Make it kind of like a back and forth that way, but instead it's, no, evil plan is to open up dimensional rift and go back to hell. And it's like, that's not really that interesting. Becomes like an action film in the last, 20 minutes after most people have been killed off, and I'm like, But still, I'd probably suggest, if you're a fan of this film, to definitely look into the 4K set. Look, honestly, I feel like maybe I was expecting too much going into it, which I feel like is a weird thing to say, because again, it's a Paul W.S. Anderson film. I know it's credited as Paul Anderson, but he has changed that since then, in terms of his actual on-screen name. But yeah, it's just... Yeah, I know a lot of people are like, Paul W.S. Anderson went to the studio and was like, hey, here's a concept for a film. It's what if Alien, but hell and BDSM and, And, yeah, and I'm like, did he really... I don't know how much of he had in development of the film. He didn't even fucking produce it. He just directed it. It was Philip Eisner who wrote it, who also didn't produce it at all. So, yeah, I don't really know what the development of this film is. I'm interested to look it up, because, again, it's got a hell of a documentary, but it also feels like it's one of those things of, it's like, because it has such a cold audience and because it's such a practical film, that, in terms of sets and stuff, that it's there's a lot to dig into. It's a high concept, a lot to dig into. It's just one of those films that, sure, could be remade today, but we all know that all that practical stuff is going to be CGI and green screen, so it's not worth it. But it's one of those things of, it's in the perfect time of, it didn't really need the floaty CGI objects. Floaty CGI water is fine. It looks like shit, but don't give me fucking bottles of water floating. That didn't make any sense to me. Where they get on the ship and you get this bottle of water that's floating and spinning, and you can hear the water swishing. But they've clearly verbally stated in the film that the whole entire ship is in deep freeze. So how the fuck is a bottle of water floating with actual water in it? It should be ice. It's just stupid, There's just a lot of that stuff where it's a script that needed working. It's a director who shouldn't have directed it. Again, he did a much better version with Resident Evil, which maybe was because he had practice with a film like this. But, yeah. Look, it is what it is in the end. I wasn't overly fond of the film. I didn't even mind the fact that halfway throughout watching it, and it's 97 minutes long, like half of my family came back home and they started watching shit out there, and I'm like, I don't even care, because I just don't care about this movie that I'm watching. But that's what it is. That's Event Horizon. A film that had a lot going into it, could have been really fucking cool. I mean, it is to some degree, but it's like, I know my friend Lachlan really likes it because, it's like, great concept, but also like the terrifying imagery, all the blood and gore and whatever. I know I said BDSM earlier, but that's just kind of a gag. But like, I don't know, I've seen a lot better films utilize this kind of idea and this kind of horror. Like, oh, blood and gore, look, they're kind of eating each other. Oh my god. Like, I've seen that shit before, and I've seen it a lot better in other films. And sometimes it's like the way it's edited, the way it's like conceived, the whole fucking idea of how it's actually developed of, oh, jump scares and here's this really creepy scene where it's basically through like a security camera, or I don't know what the fuck video was filming them when they started to go all cannibalistic, and then have one dude with his eyeballs on his hands being like, hey, hail Satan or whatever. It's like, I don't know, come on, really? It's just so poorly executed. So, I don't know, it is what it is. Arguably, this would probably be a waste of money for me, but I'm big on cold horror. I'm big on this is my style of film. It just didn't land for me. I even said in my Letterboxd review, I kind of prefer Jason X over this, because it's like the same film, but Jason X is more fun. It's more tongue-in-cheek. That knows what the fuck it is. This film is like, oh yeah, we're trying to be a like A-list horror film, but it's clearly like executed like a B-movie. What Alien wasn't in the end, because Alien was executed as an A-movie horror, it's got the idea of a B-movie horror. And this has the idea of probably an A-movie horror, but it's presented as a B-movie horror with just a big budget. So, and a big cast. Like, it's got a great cast. But it's just one of those films that it could have been a lot better. I don't think it should be remade, because it's like, this kind of space film is great, though. The whole existentialism in space is such a fucking great idea, because space is terrifying. But the one time they really utilize the fact that, oh no, one of the guys that gets lost in space is the funny black guy who uses his fucking, oxygen to fucking propel himself back to the ship. And he survives the whole fucking thing. It's like, there's no terror in that. There's no fucking, there's none of that shit, Anyway, it is what it is. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more. I wanted to be honest about it, because it's like, I know this is one of those films, it's like, it feels like for me that I shouldn't be so critical of it because it's got a cold audience, but it's like, sometimes it just doesn't jam with me. It doesn't gel, I could rewatch this and be like, now that I know what I'm watching, I could really like it, I can imagine myself liking this a lot on rewatch, but I also really can't, just because of how weak the script is and just how shitty the jump scares are. Like, it's the kind of film you want to get drunk with your friends and watch because of how kind of bad it is. So I can see why it didn't really perform very well critically. Anyway, that's all. See you next time. Adios.